How can we transform the billions of dollars in wasted building energy into actionable cost savings for healthcare? Our next guest, Chris Hollandy, is tackling this challenge as CEO of Resolute Building Intelligence. With deep roots in IT analytics and data science, Chris helped pioneer a revolutionary approach to building intelligence. Previously serving as Resolute's lead architect and chief product officer, he developed a patented solution that can analyze building data in just one day, a process that typically takes months. Driven by a mission to optimize healthcare facilities that operate 24/7 and directly impact patient care, Chris shares Resolute's innovative vision for turning complex building data into real-time, actionable insights. Join us to discover how Resolute's analytics-powered platform is transforming healthcare operations and beyond. Let's go.
Welcome to Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli, where we highlight and speak with the innovators, the game changers, and the pioneers who are deeply passionate and relentless in solving the problems our world is facing today. This is your opportunity to connect with and learn from these leaders and to support them on their mission. Perhaps they will soon be hearing your story as well. This is Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. I look forward to having you on this journey with us.
Hi, Chris. A big welcome to our podcast today.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, given your deep-seated passion for solving one of today's most important business issues, building performance, including inefficient energy use, which equates to $100 billion annually in wasted economic activity, I'm excited to discuss the impact you are having on the healthcare industry. But before we dive in, a bit of housekeeping. While listening to any of our episodes, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you will automatically receive episode updates in your podcast player. Simply search Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Lastly, please visit the bottom of the episode notes to connect with me on LinkedIn and X in order to further the conversations occurring on this podcast. All right, Chris, it's almost time for our community to learn how you and the Resolute Building Intelligence team have created a patented, analytics-driven software to help your customers optimize their building's performance, enhance efficiencies, and minimize costs. But first, what's that one piece of advice that you would give to others who are passionate about reimagining the health of our world?
Yeah, I think the biggest advice is to be patient and persistent. Any problem you're trying to solve, especially in any healthcare form, the complexity of it, the multi-dimensions that exist in it, it's going to be, you are trying to crack a giant egg, and it's not going to happen quickly or overnight. But I think that patience and persistence is always the key.
Well, it's not only advice, Chris, because I know you guys have been after it now for over 8 years with this company, and there's even history before that in regards to the early machinations of what ended up turning into Resolute. Of course, we're going to talk about all of that and more on the other side of the commercial break, but incredible feedback and advice, and it is more true than ever. It is an incredibly difficult industry to innovate in and to move, but you know as well as I do, it is the single largest industry in the United States, $3+ trillion and growing. Chris, is this a piece of advice that you also give to your team members and, of course, maybe even to your customers? They're like, hey, change doesn't happen quickly. Have to be patient, have to be persistent. What is that messaging like both internally and externally with some of your clients and customers?
Yeah, I mean, we say it's like a broken record in our office of just, you got to trust the process, right? Again, whether that equates to football, sports, life, or trying to disrupt, again, anything in healthcare. I think it's just believe in what you're doing and know that it works. And, you know, again, being around as long as we are, you have enough successes and examples of knowing, we know that there's the light at the end of the tunnel, that it's there, but just kind of keep on track. So, yeah.
Be patient, be persistent, and trust the process. Incredible advice. Again, now needed more than ever in this industry because it is a complex one. Chris, we have a lot to talk about today. We have a lot to discuss on all the wonderful things that you and the team are bringing to the healthcare industry to make all of us better. We're going to discuss all of that and more after we get back from thanking our community champion sponsor. Healthcare faces a paradox that echoes through generations. While the current practices that help heal patients today are vital, it is crucial to evaluate them through an environmental lens. OSHA's Responsible for Tomorrow initiative is a collection of interviews featuring influential thought leaders and industry experts like you who share their sustainability strategies, insights, and provide valuable perspectives from diverse industries to inspire innovation within the healthcare sector. OSHA invites you to join this journey. Want to share your sustainability story? Oster is actively looking for partners to highlight the important and inspiring work being done around the globe. Check out Oster's Responsible for Tomorrow initiative and series at oster.com. That's OSSUR.com. Or visit the episode notes and click on their link. Together, and with Oster helping lead the way, let's all be responsible for tomorrow. All right, we are back with Chris Hollandy, CEO of Resolute Building Intelligence. Chris, thank you so much. Couple big takeaways from the front end. Trust the process, patience, and persistence. You guys have been doing that for a heck of a long time now, over 8+ years as we formally know Resolute. But I know there is one heck of a story behind all of that. We're going to discuss a little bit of how this all came to be in the first place. It's a magical story, one that I loved hearing when I first met you. And then, of course, we're going to discuss a bit, what is Resolute doing today for the healthcare industry? And then, of course, what should we be thinking about tomorrow? You know as well as I do, healthcare has a massive built footprint, if you will, built environment, a lot of facilities, a lot of different types of inpatient, outpatient, hospital type of locations, a big kind of real estate footprint. So we're going to discuss all of that and more. Then, of course, we got to be able to ask how we can be helping you and the team. But first, Chris, allow our community to hear, how did this all come to be in the first place? It's a heck of a story. I'm going to get the heck out of the way, let you share with our community how did this all come to focus in the first place.
Yeah, appreciate it. I mean, it's definitely not something that we sat down and said, all right, how can we design analytics and software to help buildings? That was not the point of the structure. Actually, it was a group of people who, actually 10 years ago, who have a lot of experience in kind of your traditional IT analytics, right? So a lot of us, our founder, actually, Pete Kermanos, founded a company called CompuWare, where a lot of the products that came from that was running analytics and anomaly detection on computers, computer systems, actual code, things more in the IT realm. And so we always had this wealth of knowledge of how do we process large data sets? How do you find anomalies in near real time and find where can you either change a piece of code that'll make an app quicker for the consumer or a cart, right, quicker so someone buys more goods or whatever it has to be. But it's all in that kind of IT and data-driven world. And the idea was, look, we can take this massive analytics engine that we have all these knowledge about. How do we apply that to other areas and other verticals? And kind of what happened was through partners and different things and other verticals and other companies that we formed, Resolute really kind of was birthed of, well, there's a lot of buildings out there. There's a lot of people that are commercial real estate that are part of our investment group that said, look, we have a massive mall and we have a medical office building and we spend a lot on energy. Like there's got to be something in there. And again, from a software engineer, data scientist perspective, it's, well, yeah, let's just take that data and let's throw it into our analytics engine and we'll be off to the races. Like this would be a fun problem to solve, right? We kind of, we'll do it in the next couple of weeks and we'll be good. And that next couple of weeks took, as you mentioned in the beginning, is about 8 years running, right? And so what happened was, and kind of to that whole persistence and the complexity of it is, you have this thing that you want to churn data and analyze to find anomalies to go fix, whatever that may be, right? Well, then you go to a building and you say, okay, well, let me get the data out of a building. And what we really quickly realized was, as much as we love to solve the problem of optimizing a building for comfort, for people, for occupancy, and obviously for money and sustainability, so you use less energy, you have to connect first. And we ended up going on a journey that lasted 3 years in research and development of how we built a connector. We actually kept trying different ones. We used other people that had already built some pretty decent platforms, and we ended up building it ourselves. And in doing so, we stand here now where we actually have, we're probably the only one in our space that has a US patent on how we connect, configure, and apply our analytics suite, which again, sounds really quick. And that's something you make a business decision. But that was a 3-year process in just figuring a way that we could connect to a building and bring all of its data then into our massive analytic engine. And then obviously our company and the way we kind of approach it is we have the software and we have the development of the analytics engine pretty robustly. We have a lot of experience in that, but then you need subject matter experts that know this space, that are building engineers, mechanical engineers, people who've done design, build, spec, who know, hey, this is how a building is supposed to run. These are the kind of recipes, if you will, you should be using against this data to find more insights. And that's kind of the dance we play all the time, where the engineers kind of come up with that different recipes and different sauces and new things that they find. And then the analytics are just running and running and running. now we can help buildings. And then again, in the same breath of, we didn't want to take 3 years to develop how to connect to get data in. It's the same thing of, well, what buildings do you connect? And the good and bad problem is, well, there's every building you drive past on any daily commute or any way to drop the kids off school, and the types of buildings. And very quickly we found that, especially in healthcare and hospitals and medical office buildings, they kind of have a special need and specialty to them that kind of make them ripe for this problem to be solved.
Absolutely love that. And you're right. You would think that it would be just a quick, easy project to figure out, and then you are multi-years later. It is a complex one, but to make it easy and to make it useful at scale, sometimes it takes a long time to master. I know you guys are still mastering it as we speak. So Chris, let's take it to current state. Let's discuss, if you could, we're on an elevator. We got a few seconds with each other. Give me that quick hit. Who is Resolute?
Oh, that's a tough one. You literally put me in a one-person elevator. Yeah, I mean, the idea is connecting to that building, and you can think about that building as telling you a story every day. It's a living, breathing thing that everyone kind of looked at from arm's length. So what's going on in there? Well, you may know some things, but you don't know it all because you don't have the data, right? And so if I have that data flowing, all of a sudden it's almost like watching an episode, season 3, episode 6 of some show, and now you're starting to catch up. And you're starting to watch those episodes and figure out, well, what happened before and what's happening in future? And now you can start making real-time decisions. And I think the things that keeps us excited and passionate about this is, as I joke about the complexity, and I don't know if you would pick this market if you had to lay out all the markets to possibly go into, it's that if a problem is worth solving, it's not going to be easy. And if you can free the data, or the other analogy we use of getting that insight immediately in real time, you can start making changes in real time and then seeing the progression of that. And whether that is now you have a floor that used to be really uncomfortable is comfortable, or now you're saving X amount of dollars or reducing your consumption and hitting your sustainability targets. You could spend 4 hours talking about what you do with that data, but you got to get it, right? And you have to have something running in it. And that's kind of what we provide, especially in hospitals.
So let's go there, Chris, and thank you for setting the stage. That's perfect. The elevator doors opened, and here we are. You nailed it on the way down this proverbial building, if you will. Chris, all joking aside, obviously you and the team did not start out pursuing healthcare. You somewhat kind of got pulled into it. Maybe share a bit with a lot of healthcare experts rallied around this podcast, passionate about this kind of work. What pulled you into it? What did some of those folks inside the healthcare industry or the facilities thereof, what did they see that your platform could help with their facilities? How did you guys get pulled into healthcare, and why?
Yeah, very quickly. I mean, we were really blessed with some of our early adoption customers. One had a healthcare kind of twist to it. Another was commercial real estate. I mean, it was very, very evident very quickly is that when you ask, well, how important is this building to your business, right? If you're a building owner, operator, and you use it to do things or house your employees, like, yeah, that's important. But with a hospital, you start realizing, I mean, very quickly, you have something that runs like a hotel, right? So that's 24/7 operation. And then the specifics of what you're doing in caring for patient care. In fact, there's a lot of Press Ganey scores and other things that you do of how are you feeling? What's your pain level? Well, there's questions in there of how comfortable were you, right? And so now you've elevated the fact that maybe I'm in my office, and if I'm not high enough in my corporate chain, no one cares that I'm cold or that I'm warm. But if I'm on a maternity floor or if I'm in a critical care unit, it is imperative. In fact, there's probably people that are much smarter than me to tell you that the humidity and temperature and other things can actually affect whether it's a surgical procedure or whether it could affect the therapies that happen after surgery, whatever it happened to be, a recovery, all those things. All of a sudden, the building itself in a hospital, which I think really probably pre-pandemic still was in this arm's length away of, well, it's the building. We're now it is an important tool in the entire healthcare process of a person, right? If someone goes into the building and they're waiting, or then they're going through a procedure and afterwards, and all those things kind of mix in, well, now the building does actually have a bigger role, or at least it always has had a bigger role, and maybe people understand it a little bit better. And so that's where it kind of checks all those boxes of how important. And then, as we know, you said it about healthcare being, it's one of the largest employers in our country. It's one of the biggest industries, but it's also one of the most struggling ones where it's not a consumer driven product. You don't just raise prices. Maybe you do, but you can't just do the same thing as if it was a manufacturing plant or an automobile manufacturer, right? It's just something that it touches everyone's lives, right? And everyone has to, unfortunately, kind of deal with healthcare in positive and negative ways all the time. And so that just bubbles the importance of that. For us, again, we're always looking at, that's something that it's really easy. It doesn't take a lot to get excited about solving a problem that's going to affect something that is that integral right into our culture.
And take us behind the scenes a bit, Chris, in regards to when you guys first started entertaining the healthcare vertical, if you will. One thing that plagues healthcare is this monster that I like to call, it's a 2-word slogan, status quo. We always seem to always go back to this is how it's always been done. A lot of status quo in healthcare. When you guys first started being pulled into healthcare or reaching out and making calls and scheduling meetings with healthcare decision makers, were people kind of taken back? Like, is this real? Or, hey, we've always been doing it this way, Chris. We're doing just fine. What were those early days like when you first started entertaining the healthcare industry? Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe they were very receptive. But what was that like when you first started entertaining healthcare?
Yeah, no. And actually, it's the same problem you deal with today. There still is a very big disconnect between a leadership team in a hospital system or in a single hospital, for example, right? And then what's happening in facilities, because everyone kind of recognizes it's important and its role is a little different. And so on one hand, you have a tool, our tool and our support staff really helps the team understand what they need to do. But that team also kind of needs resources and also needs kind of the focus to be able to do what they need to do, right? And it's not just a line item of, okay, I can save you 30%. Okay, here you go. I circled it and now I'm going to put it into the forecast. And so now we got to go hit those numbers. I kind of joke, we're already trying to take on a lot by disrupting how we take data from a building, but now we have to disrupt a communication piece of all the facets of the building and how it operates, being bubbled up to all the way to a COO or a CEO of what's going on. And I can tell you that in the 8+ years that we've been in this space, and I joke that I'm a software data scientist, not a building expert, but as I've kind of had to become more of an expert, or at least copy whatever the experts tell me to say aloud, you're seeing a positive trend, right? You're seeing people who recognize, hey, we've seen how things are. We know we don't have this data. And maybe it's a, look, we see what you can provide for us, but you know what? We probably need to get our ducks in a row and let's format properly so that the team has what they need to be able to do the things. And, so it's this back and forth. I mean, unfortunately, we're kind of like a personal trainer. We don't control the building, right? We don't come in. We kind of step outside and be agnostic. We connect to all these different systems. So we don't have one that is our favorite flavor, or we don't have a hidden agenda where I'm trying to sell you my boiler or my contract group, right? I'm just trying to give you the data and the things to give you a roadmap of how to get to wherever your goals are. But just like a personal training, right? I need that loop through. You need to be able to do the things I'm saying so that now we're one of the success stories that we have. And we've had tremendous customers in all different verticals, big public school systems, a lot of healthcare systems, and every building's its own special snowflake, right? Every group that runs them are. And so I think we keep going back to the data is the data, right? And if the data becomes the source of truth, all the conversations and all the things you can kind of get through, right? But you're always kind of building that knowledge. You're always training people on how to understand data and use it, right? Which they're not used to. I think that's one thing we talk about all the time is there's so many other aspects in healthcare in which data is the number 1, 2, and 3 thing that is looked at, whether it's a board. I was in a CEO's office one time where he showed me these printouts of admits to beds to time and recoveries to all these metrics. And it's so metric driven. And then you ask, well, what do you spend on energy? And they're like, well, it's kind of complicated. It's like, well, how many things do you need to fix? And what's your sustainability goals? And what do you, and it's like, well, we're not really sure. We pay some companies, they come back, they tell us, and it goes back to the biggest thing of just doing what you're doing to not be worse than you were before. But do you know if you're as optimized as maybe you could? Well, and that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to have you on the podcast, because I'm sure you've spent plenty of time with these operators and have heard it yourself. But we're looking at, healthcare facilities or, healthcare enterprises operating at sometimes less than 1% margin. This stuff can add up quickly, right? Especially if you have a massive footprint. We got to be doing and contemplating every little thing and big thing about how we run the business, both in the physical to human capital or otherwise. These are incredibly important topics and incredibly important times to adjust accordingly. So I'm glad to hear
that you're seeing those executive operators starting to understand the power and the magnitude here. And I love how you and the team are taking, again, that agnostic approach. I just want to give you the data so you can act upon it, right? Because this is a time where we are really hurting right now in healthcare to figure out how to just even stay afloat. So this is one of the big reasons why I wanted to bring you on. Yeah,
I appreciate it. And I think that's the thing, right? Because what's the alternative? If you're status quo, then you've either got to spend more money and add more people, or you got to cut more people. And I mean, when we're talking about healthcare, that's kind of a non-starter, right? If you're trying to provide the best care you can, what are other mechanisms? And honestly, there's not a whole lot of other things you can do. But when you step back, right, if you do the sales pitch on, if we're looking at all buildings across the United States, 70% of all electricity that's being used in the United States is being used in buildings, right? And so what is the subsection of that in hospitals? Well, it's not small, right? Probably the biggest building that you have in any municipality or township or not big, massive city, it's probably that hospital. That's 1 million square foot, 2 million square foot facility just using energy. And like you said, with the margins, I mean, from an operational side, right, the math works pretty nicely, right? Every dollar you save on the bottom end operationally, it's 20x on the top. If your margins are slim enough, it could be 30x, right? If your margins are really slim. And so if you could do something that's very quick and light and doesn't cost money, and you can use the team you have now, and you can have data identify those low hanging fruit items, it's flipped aside, right? And so on the top end, you can say, look, what would you do if you could be the equivalent of generating another $1 million in revenue? Well, you know, you might be able to pay different people within the healthcare organization the way they should be, or you can add where you need to add, or provide other ways of putting money back in that is helping the overall care. And I think that's something that everyone can get behind, because everyone goes to a hospital at some point, right? So we all see the benefit of that as consumers, as well as people that are trying to run a business.
I absolutely love it. And you're so spot on, right? How do we reassign that? Maybe we can bring on a new specialist in a certain type of doctor, or a certain type, open up a new division, whatever that might be. Being able to do these things is incredibly powerful and needed right now. So, you know, obviously we've talked about, we're starting to see folks warming up to this and understanding the magnitude and the power of what Resolute can do for their facilities. So let's grab the crystal ball off the shelf, Chris. Let's look a little future state, take this out 2 to 3, 3 to 5 years, not just for the industry, right? And thinking about healthcare and really looking at their physical footprint through a kind of a data-driven and analytic point of view, if you will, but also, where is Resolute going to be in the next 2 to 3, 3 to 5 years? You know as well as I do, things are coming at us incredibly fast, whether it be AI, machine learning, predictive, whatever it might be. It could be a very interesting time over the next number of years. What are you seeing in that crystal ball, Chris?
Yeah, I think the same holds true, that the base of all that. So if you want to have, let's take the autonomous car example, right? If you want to have full autonomy, AI driving everything, doing everything, if you base that decision tree down, that model has to have data. It cannot run any kind of statistical model. It cannot create any type of AI if it does not have the data. So what you want to do in 5 years, you have to start getting the data now. And we love our analytics engine. We love our rule sets. We love the things we have. But the first thing is, do you have the data that you need for what you want to use it for, right? And I think that's where, for us, from a software side, that's the easy roadmap, right? Is if I have the data I need, we can just add all the tools we have. I just need to get connected and have that data go through those models, right? The road's being laid. That's the easy part. The hard part is, well, do I have the data? And if you don't now, you're starting now. So in 3 years, I can't connect 3 years from today and have 3 years worth of data. I've just started brand new. And so it's kind of, now you're starting to see that trend of, how do I future-proof my decisions so that I can take advantage of whatever's out there in 3, 5+ years, right, with technology.
It's a great point for our community that's tuning in. You start working on it today if you want to start preparing for tomorrow. I absolutely love that. Chris, what is Resolute doing today to get ready for tomorrow? What does the horizon look like for the organization? And like I said, you've been at it now for well over 5 years, some ways 10, if you will. It's an incredible length of time for a startup to be running. What are you seeing in the next number of years for your organization as well?
Yeah, I mean, kind of building on top of that, right? We're always constantly improving our analytics, always improving our reports, improving what customers want to see. And then, of course, we spent the 3 years in the research and development of that connection and how we connect and configure and kind of apply our analytics so that it takes a day and not weeks, months, and years to get something like that off the project. But that can also always be turned over. I mean, there are a lot of manufacturers that are coming out with new equipment that have even more sensors, even more data. And so just making sure that we're prepared and leading with that so that when we're introducing our AI models and other pieces, right, you have that base to work with.
Excellent. Very, very exciting horizon for the team. Thank you for that, Chris. We'll put the crystal ball back on the proverbial shelf for now. We'll bring it back to current state. Of course, we got to be able to have an offer to help you and the team out. This is an incredible community rallied around this podcast now for over 5 years. Just celebrated that 5th anniversary. So we got to give a shout out to our community members tuning in. But of course, they love to help out our guests. So what's one problem, need, or question that you have that our community can be helping you with?
Yeah, I think it would be the ask of being open to, well, what do you have for data now? I think part of it is that kind of disconnect I mentioned earlier, where there's a lot of assumptions that maybe you have the data you think you do. Well, I have this system and I have that. Well, pick a day, pick a number. Do you know the temperature of a room, 5 years ago at 9:00 on September 17th? I don't know. Do you have that? Because that's the basis for whatever kind of analytic and rule and things you want to use for that data. And I think being open to saying, well, let's try something, right? Let's see what happens. I think other companies like ourselves that because of the work we've done and the research that we've put into the way we can connect now for no cost, right? I can connect to the system you have and see that data in action so that you can kind of understand, all right, is this something that I can take advantage of and go forward? Not all right, here's a project. Now you got to commit to something before you realize, maybe that wasn't the best deal. And I think being open to that, I think asking those questions, whether it's for building data or it's for any other kind of disruptive technology that you're trying to put into the building, and just being open to that innovation.
And for our community that wants to have those conversations with you, Chris, how do they get a hold of you? Social media handles, contact points online, websites, or otherwise. How do they get a hold of you, Chris?
Yeah, on LinkedIn Messengers, probably the classic, everyone, Chris Hollandy on LinkedIn. Our website is resolutebi.com. Then my email is chollandy@resolutebi.com. And so you can reach out to me anywhere in those forms.
Easy enough. And for our listening community, just simply scroll on down to your favorite podcast player. All those contact points will be in the episode notes for Chris and the team. Of course, you can head over to our free global online community as well over at passionatepioneers.com. There will be a post for Chris' episode where you can also leave any comments, feedback, suggestions, or otherwise, and grab those contact points online, again, over at passionatepioneers.com. Chris, I knew this was going to be a fun conversation. I was excited for it. We finally got it on the books. What a wonderful, wonderful discussion and all the incredible work you and the team are doing at Resolute. But before we get you out of here, we do have one more piece for you. It's real quick, real easy. It's a fill in the blank. I'm a passionate pioneer because
I'm passionate about solving problems, solving complex, big, hairy problems. And the way to do it is with technology and data. And I believe in that data.
I love it, Chris. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much again for taking time to be on the podcast today, taking a break out of your busy schedule to share all the wonderful work happening in the Resolute camp. We appreciate all that you are doing to move the healthcare industry forward. Wishing you all the best, Chris. But again, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today on Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. We'd love to hear your feedback about the podcast so we can continue to improve this community and to further support the pioneers being featured. Lastly, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and invite your friends and colleagues to join us. This is Passionate Pioneers with Mike Biselli. I look forward to having you back with us during our next episode.